Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is our late week show for Holy Bull Stakes Day, Saturday, January 31st, final show of January. PTF back with you in the freezing Brooklyn bunker. I've got my layers on. I've got the space heater going. And we're back in action here. And on this show, we're going to pretty much dive right in. It's going to be on the In the Money YouTube channel as well. Get involved in the comments over there. Let us know what you think of these races. I'm really happy to be joined by a man. I'll ask him about his weather. It's surely not as bad as here down there on the planet Texas. Nick Tammaro, how are things?
I'm going great, Pete. It's almost 70 here today. We are expecting a little cold front to come through tomorrow. So our high on Saturday is about 45, which for us is a chilly day. But I'm not gonna get any sympathy from you for that. I looked at the long range forecast for New York. I mean, it is not pretty. I'm hopeful we see racing at Aqueduct next week, but
it's tough. I cannot recall in my adult life having a stretch that we've already had and then looking at the 10-day and not seeing a single day above freezing. Yeah. Now, obviously, for racing purposes, you can race when it's freezing. It's much harder with the wind and like it is out there today. I mean, it was just ridiculously unpleasant. But I'll tell you what, and I'm sure they're not gloating about it, but the loss of racing in so many different corners of the country has been a win for our friends at First. Now, granted, they've had their own weather stuff this meet. They paid the piper, but now they have, to mix a metaphor, the chicken's coming home to roost. Sunny weather in California. It's been decent down there in Florida as well. And for the second weekend in a row, there's going to be a lot of attention at Gulfstream Park. We've got these last three races that we're going to look at on this card. Going to have another show also on the YouTube channel. Maybe we'll throw the audio up as well with Randy Moss and Jerry Bailey talking about these same races. If you're looking for another opinion, you can check that out. But let's see if we can't hit this sequence, hit this gimmick. We had a lot of money bet on these gimmicks at Gulfstream and Santa Anita last weekend. Hopefully that momentum is going to continue to build. I think it will. On NBC once again, which is great. TV ratings were actually really terrific last weekend. So we'll see what happens as far as that goes. But, none of it matters unless we pick some winners. So that's the goal here. Let's start off talking about the race that kicks off this Sunset 6. Once again, we've talked so many times about these player-friendly terms, but just to really hammer the message home, the dollar minimum works in players' advantage. So does the low takeout, as does the fact that the computers don't have the same kind of access to these pools. In terms of game selection, if you can find some opinions, this is a place to get involved. I've also got written coverage of these stakes horse by horse. You can find those over at inthemoneypodcast.com. Let's kick this off with the Forward Gal. 7 furlongs. Not a race that every year has Oaks implications. I'm not sure if it will or it won't this year, but I am very curious about your idea of the winner, Nick Tammaro. How do you want to kick this thing off?
Yeah, I mean, you would assume these are mainly going to be sprinters, at least the way most of them look profile-wise, and this series starts a little bit shorter than the Colts version does. Obviously, Pete, this is in many ways a classic situation of newly turned 3-year-olds with one horse that ran faster as a 2-year-old than everybody else, and that's the Sticks on Time Girl, who avenged a defeat in the Myrtlewood with a really powerful effort in the Fern Creek, had a really nice trip in there, sitting outside, slow pace, powered clear late, sort of a textbook IRAD trip, as he wants to get his horses to settle a little bit and then kick away. Is she as good as her numbers look for that race? Probably not. But is she better than most of this field? Yeah, I mean, to me, save Mythical, she's probably a lot better than most of these horses based on what we've seen so far. So unless you're projecting some big move forward from one of these others, it's going to be tough to beat her. I wouldn't shortchange Mythical. Those restricted races, the Florida Stallion Series, granted the competition was not much, but she was sort of in a race against herself. And that My Dear Girl, they were flying around there early. That was a very, very strong pace, and she stayed on. Admittedly, if there was a good-looking closer in there, they probably would have tagged her, but that was at a mile and a 16. This is only 7/8, and I think Edgard Zayas has some options early as far as what he can do. She is the speed of the speed on paper. I would assume she'll end up on the lead. I hate to just be chalky to start it, but I think this is 4-6, and really the only horse that I thought I could make a decent case for that might be some kind of price would be the 7 Holland Drive, who kind of looked like she was losing contact with the field around the turn last time and then really hit her stride when they straightened out and finished powerfully. she feels like a horse that might have a little bit of upside.
6 and 4 on the A line. And would you want to include Holland Drive, the 7, in your official picks that I'm going to send around to our friends
Yeah,
in the Money Plus?
I would include her as a backup.
I'm with you. I don't think I have much to add on Time Girl, but I wanted to make a little case for Imperatrice as one that could, or Imperatrice, I'm going to say, we'll say it the Italian way, that I liked a little bit. Big step up, second time of asking, cost a pretty penny. I called her in my write-up the Timu version of On Time Girl, in that had an easy trip last time, but finished really well. And obviously the company was much easier in Imperatrice's case. But I also just, from a race design point of view, you talked about the prototypical Erad ride. I thought this one could do with a prototypical Johnny V ride, sort of stalking and grinding. And I gave a chance to get involved, and I wanted to use as an A as well. Hopefully bringing a decent price to the party. And one that I wanted as a deeper backup was Music Burst. Rusty Arnold, sort of known for bringing horses along slowly. This one's improved in figure terms every start. And there's a lot of horses out of that last race that improved their numbers. And this one I thought also could get maybe the right kind of trip. We'll take a little bit of a shot there for me. But we're in agreement that the favorite is most definitely the one to beat. A couple of other ideas for you. For Nick, gonna mess around with the 4, the Florida bred, and the 7. I'm gonna throw the 8 and the 11 in there. Do you have anything wildly against either of the ones I threw out there? You know, I never mind being challenged on these shows. That's how you learn.
No, not at all. I mean, I respect the work Rusty Arnold does, and Magic Burst did win a good-looking race in second asking, so I don't have an argument there. And Imperatrice feels like she'll get a good trip on the outside, no denying that. Interestingly, Timeform US-wise, they have her running better in her debut than she ran in her second start. Of course, that's heavily pace influenced, and the pace in her debut is very strong. So she has some talent, definitely has some ability. 7/8 might be exactly what she wants with that outside stalking trip.
Let's talk about this listed stake that for through the 3-year-old fillies, the Swedish Chant going a mile and a 16th on the turf. I wasn't terribly creative in here. I thought Aggressive Lime made the most sense, has a good resume, only blemish being that stakes run, and only beaten 2 in there. Could have gotten faster in the 73 days since she's raced. The 8 runner, Sister Troyenne, had an easy trip in a stakes last time, but I thought might be very likely to get an easy trip again without that much pace signed on. And a runner I have my eye on if they go unexpectedly fast, especially the 6 runner Storm's Wake, put in some good work last time, and I thought would move forward in this start. I had it 10, 8, and 6. What are your numbers in the Swedish Chant?
Yeah, Sister Troyenne is a horse who caught my attention, quite honestly, when she won at Keeneland. When I had her a little bit mispriced on the morning line, she went off even money. I think I had her at 3-1 or 7-2, and she got absolutely pounded. This is a really fun pedigree for those of us that were fans of horses like I'm forgetting the horse's name now. It ran forever for Tom Albertrani, Sadler's Joy. So
Yes.
second dam here was Dynair. Dynapasser was one of the siblings of Sadler's Joy, and a couple of others in the family that were very good, accomplished turf horses. I thought she was going to win last time very handily. She didn't. She had a soft trip. She kind of never really powered away from them. She sort of won within herself. I just don't know how much she's moving forward, and I do think that this is the first time. So Spirit Doll, who's on the outside, was entered in her last race and ended up scratching. Spirit Doll ran really well in her lone turf start, beat a weak field, but did it impressively, powered clear late. The Tis the Laws seem to really love the turf, which is something worth noting moving forward. So now you have Spirit Doll back. You have Aggressive Lime getting into this field. It feels like the waters are a lot deeper for Sister Troyenne this time around. So I do think her stablemate is going to get the better of it pace-wise after getting stuck behind a slow pace last time out. I'm inclined to use as many of them as possible because I just don't trust them. And I think I've got relatively decent, narrow type opinions moving forward. So I'm probably just going to use the 6, 8, 10, and 11 here and try and get through it alive because I just don't trust any one of that 4 enough to maybe play them an extra time.
I get it. And to your point about Sister Troyenne, it was for as easy of a trip as that was. It's not like this was some wrap up at the end. I mean, they were, and we've talked many times that can be overrated. Oh, they could have gone faster. They wrapped up. But the sort of corollary when they're being, really asked and not overly finishing with an easy trip. Maybe that is a reason to spread a little bit more, but neither of us are brave enough to leave her out of the numbers completely, and that might tell us something about the rest of the field. Anyway, 6, 8, 10, and 11 for you. I'm going to mess around at 10, 8, and 6. We will win or lose together in that one, seemingly. Let's get to the race that gives the day its name. Kentucky Derby, points and clues on the line in this mile and a 16th Holy Bull. Who do you like in here, my friend?
I mean, really, now that we're going to deal with the scratches of butane and game for it, it feels like pace-wise, that really helps the cause of Cannoneer, who looked like he was probably the speed of the speed on paper, and now he almost certainly will be. This was a horse that was obviously highly regarded first time out, 2-5 as an early season 2-year-old debuting runner for Brad Cox, which we just don't see very much of. And he didn't perform quite at the level we expected that day. Battled on the front end, ended up losing to a good horse in Comport, who came back and won a stakes race later in the year. Really put it together second time out. The balance of the field is held up figure-wise. I mean, they're not running huge numbers. He beat them like a drum. But the 65s came back and ran 68s. The 60s came back and ran 63s. So it's about all you would expect. I think he's probably going to wire this field. I'm anticipating that IRAD is going to be pretty aggressive. There are two questions with regards to how to approach this race from a wagering perspective. Do you think that Incredibolt is going to take a step forward, which I watched his last workout. He looked very, very good. He completely shredded his workmate, which he was supposed to, galloped out by a ton, feels like a real distance horse. Riley Mott is also Bill Mott's son, which means that he's probably not going to put the screws to a horse to get him back 100% in the Holy Bull, right? This is a horse that he's going to want to see progress as time goes by. And then the other question is, will Nearly be as effective coming off Lasix facing tougher competition? And I want to believe that Nearly's big move forward since coming to South Florida is because he's really coming into his own. He ended up running in a pretty tough debut race at Aqueduct anyway. So for my purposes on this ticket, I'm going to single Cannoneer. I'm going to back up with Incredibolt and Nearly because I've got to get thin on the A-line somewhere. And I do think Cannoneer, I'm going to buy that last race, and I'm going to assume that it was just a jumping off point.
And it is a good point. Now with butane out of the race, when I originally handicapped this race, butane was, I think, always a little unlikely, but not out. And that does make Cannoneer more of a contender than I probably had him in my write-up, where I took him seriously, but I ended up talking about the other two that you mentioned with Nearly on top. I've been very impressed with this horse. I mean, you get your wise guy card taken away if you overrate big figures in 4-horse fields, but I can't help but be impressed with that last run from Nearly. I think should be able to get a good trip in here, and it's just a major player I want on all tickets. And I mean, I can't really say anything better than what you said about Incredibolt. I feel pot committed to him, if only because of how high up he is on our in the money top 10 for this year's Kentucky Derby. You can check out that video elsewhere on our channel. Please subscribe while you're over there as well. I had it 7-1. I probably need to work some 5s on my tickets. So that'll be back to the drawing board for me. We'll take our dinner break. We'll head out to Santa Anita, where action picks up with another graded stakes. We've got the 1 mile on the turf, megahertz for these fillies and mares 4 and up. How shall we start the SoCal portion of this Sunset Six? It also kicks off another bet we love, that late pick 3 at Santa Anita. And this is, of course, also involved as the middle leg in that all-turf pick 3, another very player-friendly wager. How do we get through it?
Yeah, I don't want to beat up on a fellow Paisan while he's down, but Umberto Rispoli did not really do the 2 Public Assembly any favors last time out, dragging her back to last. I mean, there was conjecture going into that race that she could end up on the lead, and she was absolutely last going by the stands the first time and ended up actually putting in a pretty good run to get 5th, going the mile and an 1/8. The issue here is there is a lot more speed, which is going to help for sure. Not really certain a mile is her best trip. I do think it fits her in this kind of race contextually because there is the pace that we're going to get. But I, with all that said, Pete, I think Jonathan Thomas has them situated perfectly in here, and he's kind of bringing 2 soldiers to the fight because he's going to use Going Lucky to go forward, which is not only Going Lucky's preferred style, but that's going to help Will Then. And if they're their morning lines, I want Will Then at 4-1 more than Public Assembly at 5-2. And that's really what it boils down to. I don't see the winner coming from outside of those 2. I know there might be a little bit of support for Vibes, but Vibes to me has beaten weaker horses, lesser competition throughout her career. I'm intrigued a little bit by Sign No More, who's first time Phil D'Amato, obviously with East Coast turf form, caught a couple of wet turf courses as well towards the end of her 3-year-old campaign. So she probably wants a little bit firmer footing. But with that said, I'm going to loan a Will Then. I'm going to use Public Assembly as a backup, and I'll probably have Sign No More in there as a backup as well.
All right, let me get the number on Sign No More. That's the 8 runner. You got the 4 alone on the A line with the 2 and the 8. What about, you didn't want to leave Will Then in the picks?
I picked Will Then on top. Yeah.
Oh, Will Then is the 4.
Will Then is the 4. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. Brain is. I told you it's cold down here. The brain is freezing. No, I put Public Assembly on top, and maybe I'm overreacting to the trip last time, but I just thought that it's one of those situations where you go from being wrangled back into a slow pace to a race that looks to me like it has plenty of pace, and just with all the races to run back to Public Assembly, I just sort of went in that direction. Vibes, who Mike Probosi still makes fun of me for calling Vibez on a podcast one time, I thought could be clearly forgiven for that grade 1 run. And I just contend with this idea that the market sometimes underrates the drop from grade 1 to any non-claiming race. Yeah. I think fits well enough to use. And then I had Will Then, and maybe I'll revisit this. I had as more of a backup, but I understand your case thoroughly, and we'll look at that again. But I thought 2, 7, and 4 might get us out of this one. Take another long look at your 8. All right, the big question about this 8th race, this allowance, 6.5 on the dirt, return to the races of Cornucopian, who was meant to run in the Malibu, flipped in the paddock. Was fine, but that's an auto scratch, understandably. Comes back here a month later. Is there any beating him? I'll just ask it like that.
I think so. I think there's a horse in here that can beat him. Obviously his best race, which we saw in his debut at Oaklawn, is way too much for these horses. But, we didn't get that version of that horse in either of his next 2 starts. He ran very well in the Arkansas Derby, no doubt about it, with the way that pace shook out. But then he was very average against Garamond, barely held second in a 3-horse race. And now we see him whisked off to the sidelines. Yes, he was supposed to run in the Malibu when he was favored in that race at the time that he flipped in the paddock. I think that probably had more to do with reputation than anything else. Baffert's been training with imagination. He's looked fine, no dazzling workouts, nothing that would lead you to say, oh gosh, this horse is a cinch by any means. The thing that I'm concerned about with him is I thought Simple Song, the 7, ran really, really well last time. And I understand there probably wasn't a horse of Cornucopian's caliber in that field. But if you're somebody that likes to break down races in terms of looking at the sectionals and where horses are early, where they are late, I mean, he completely shredded the other speed horses last time. Caught 2 fresh challenges, one really big one from Red Flag, who went by him, and then he ended up losing a photo for second. This is a horse that now draws outside the other speed. The only horse who is outside is Whiskey Gin and Brandy, who has nowhere near, and See-Through, who have nowhere near his level of speed. He's going to get that outside stalking trip. I think this horse is probably even better than his buyer figures and his running line sort of show because of the pace of his last race. So I have to try Simple Song. I'm going to pick Simple Song on top. For purposes of the Sunset 6, I'll use both he and Cornucopian. I'm inclined to maybe take another horse that's going to be coming from off of it because of those 2 running styles.
Yeah.
And I know Red Flag just won. I don't really see why he can't win right back. This could end up proving to be a really astute claim by Jeff Mullins. He got a setup last time. And as much as I want to hold it against March of Time that he lost last time out, he arguably ran a winning race. Positivity and Tessuto on their days are both really solid veteran horses. So I can back up with the 2 and 3. So 5, 7 is A's, 2, 3 backups.
2, 3 as backups. I like that. I ultimately I'll start my logic from the beginning. So while I respect Simple Song and kind of started the race wanting to get there, I was worried that based on how we think Cornucopian is doing, if nothing else, he'll make Simple Song's job impossible, which led me to wanting to find a closer. I couldn't find a closer, so I came all the way back around to this master of the obvious, Cornucopian in a very slow last furlong. If I could do a same race parlay, Cornucopian and a slow final furlong, I think that's how I do it. Maybe I'll try to do some talking myself into Red Flag and March of Time. I just for whatever reason I couldn't quite get there in my analysis, but I think it's certainly a lot more exciting to try to take on Cornucopia. And I think you have a smart way of trying to do that. You're narrow enough elsewhere that you probably don't feel like you're cutting off your nose to spite your face to include the obvious favorite. I may just run some stuff through Cornucopian and hope that I'm right. We'll see. Probably take another look at that one. It's an interesting race, a few interesting races from a handicapping and betting theory points of view. If folks have opinions of theirs they want to share, go ahead and hit us in the comments. Let's get to this 6.5 maiden on the turf, not a downhill race, on the main oval that closes this out. Closes out, obviously, the late double, too. Another terrific wager we want to promote as much as possible. When it comes to all the late picks and the Sunset Six, how are we going to get paid, my friend?
Yeah, this is a really tough way to finish it, Pete. And I dug through this field quite a bit and ultimately came to the conclusion that I want to bet the 2 Novita Dominga, who really has a nice dam side pedigree for turf. The dam herself was a debut winner for Brad Cox. She won a race called the Black Hat Lacombe Memorial at Fairgrounds. Ironically, her second dam, her second dam won the same race, which is kind of funny. And this is a not this time. They're obviously fine. First time out, first time turf. I thought she drew well on the inside and hopefully can be ready first time out. I believe she can be. I want to use the 5 Soul Sister, who I think is probably better cut out to sprinting, moved aggressively around the turn, 2 back at Del Mar on the turf. The connections here are going to drive plenty of people away. So we're going to get every bit of that 10-1 morning line, if not more. And I want to use the 11 counterbalance. So those are going to be my 3, 1 firster, 2 experienced horses. I think counterbalance ultimately probably wants to sprint as well. First time Lasix now coming back off the layoff for Michael McCarthy. The only horse that's going to get money that I'm not going to include is the 1 Silky Save. And this is a horse that actually overseas showed some speed. Phil D'Amato worked her in company last out, and she looked like she was having a really hard time keeping up down the stretch. I wonder if maybe he had put enough fitness into her before that, but I just wish she was coming into the race a little bit better. Having the rail is tricky going down this chute, and she's going to be a little overbet for me. So I wanted to try the 2, 5, and 11 and see if I could just get out with those 3, no backups. If I get alive to them, I'll be plenty happy.
I get it. My fear about your top pick was only if this was more of a starting point and might be too sharp. I mean, you did mention about the dam winning first out, but I think that was 2 turns and
it was a mile. Yep.
On this blood, I just wasn't sure if she'd be ready. I probably will throw in on your say so in the end. I definitely get Soul Sister, but I was more leaning towards counterbalance. Hasn't run fast enough yet. But I thought there were a couple of reasons to believe that she could do a lot better here. One being this just looks like a profile that I absolutely love for down the hill. Looked like one that still had something left going the 5, went inefficiently fast going the mile. It might be just a case of the right horse getting the right distance, adding the Lasix, having that short break in the right hands. Love this blood for down the hill with the sprinter. The crack sprinter grade 1 group 1 I should say sprinter Caravaggio on top, Kitten's Joy on the bottom, just a lot of arrows pointing in that direction. So I think we'll probably end up both with the same numbers. I'll be pressing the 11 more, but I will definitely work some 2s and 5s in there as well. Any other thoughts from you, Nick, on these cards at Gulfstream or Santa or anything else cooking this weekend?
Yeah, a lot of fun races on both, no doubt about it. I'll obviously have all my info up at twinspires.com, and then I'll do a little deeper dive into the Sunset 6 sequence and have that up at inthemoneypodcast.com.
Love it. Lots of places to find Nick. You can follow him on Twitter as well at ntam1215, a shining light in the cesspool that is horse racing Twitter. I'll say it that way.
It's been a process to become that, let me tell you.
You preferred being the turd in the punch bowl, didn't you? But that race to the bottom was too much.
Yeah.
We never got to do our Houston sports corner that we often do this time of year. I told you in a private communication that I had ended up making an ill-fated bet on the Texans to win the playoffs. What is the talk around CJ Stroud and his future with the Texans after this playoff? I'd call it a run, but it was more of a walk, if not a stumble.
Yeah, it was a stumble, I would say, but he didn't do himself any favors as far as staring down an extension and also just an option pickup. Obviously, they're going to pick up his option, but I don't think he played himself to a contract extension yet, and he's really going to have to play in 26 to prove it. So you watch film on CJ from 23 and then 24 and 25, and he looks like a totally different player. I mean, all the gunslinging and the bravado in 23 seems to be gone. And now he's a guy that's very nervous. He's very sort of jittery in the pocket. And he just made way too many mistakes in that game against New England. And of course, in retrospect, you realize what opportunity they had there, given that, taking their defense to Denver to face a guy like Jarrett Stidham, he would have had a hard time probably putting up 3 points, and really only made one play the entire game. He made one catastrophic play on the other end of it. So, yeah, it was right there for him. So it's really frustrating. And obviously, the franchise never getting past this divisional round has gotten to be beyond old. So, the hope is that maybe with a second place schedule next year and the NFC East, they can at least get themselves to a 2 seed and have a home game in the divisional round. But, the second place schedule in the AFC doesn't really help you a ton this year, because that means you end up with the Chargers, the Bills, and the Ravens. So it's almost teams you would expect to be in the first slot of all those 3 divisions. But, alas, you've got to beat who's in front of you. And they do get the balance of the AFC North, which obviously is going through a certain amount of turmoil, including horse owner Todd Monken getting named the head coach of the
How amazing was that? Yeah, we've had the pleasure of hanging out with him many times, vis-a-vis the 10 Strike crew and Marshall specifically. And yeah, I was pretty well floored and pleased to see him getting that. Or not necessarily the assignment one would pick if one were picking a head coach job, but beggars can't be choosers when it comes to stuff. There's only 30 of them, so you take what you can get, obviously. But no, in all seriousness, it's great to see him with that opportunity.
Yeah, I would have liked to see him as the Giants offensive coordinator.
Me too.
And, maybe there's an argument that if he had done a good job with that for a year, he could have potentially played himself into a better job next year. But when you're getting close to his age and somebody gives you the opportunity, you take it.
Oh,
so
no
I don't blame him. It's not going to be an easy task.
No, it's a no-brainer to give it a shot, and I'm excited to see how it turns out. All right, we'll save the Astros for next time, because we've got other stuff coming up on the audio side. If you're watching on YouTube, click on one of our other videos. Depending on when this goes up, you might have Randy Jerry analysis of the 3 stakes at Gulfstream we talked about, and you'll definitely be able to find that most recent top 10 list. Who knows? Maybe it will be shaken up. You'd have to think, with as high as we have Incredible, it should be shaken up one way or another. Come next week. Hopefully we'll have some more content for you there. Thank you so much, Nick. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. If you're listening on the audio side, we'll be back right after this.